Seth is a graduate, actually, of the Seattle School of Psychology and Theology down there in Belltown. We talk about them a lot around here. We're big fans of that school. Dan Allender, who's been with us many times, is from there. Seth just finished his master's in theology and culture there, and has been writing this book, Feels Like Redemption, which is a book about freedom. And so thanks for hanging with us and being able to share a little bit.
Absolutely.
As we've been in this series, as a church, you and I were just talking, we're talking about this idea of calling and vocation and joy and meaning, and about how last week in our series, we're talking about how brokenness isn't something to step around on our journey toward experiencing calling, but it's something to step into. Yeah. And of course, you're well acquainted with the idea that people don't want to do that.
No, they don't. No.
So maybe we can
talk about it.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the fact. Well, first of all, the book we've talked about how it's a little bit of a Trojan horse because it's couched in the conversation around porn addiction, which is something that the church is ready to cry uncle about and say we do need some help here. But actually, the secret is, folks, it's about a lot more than that, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that, your goals for the book, what you're trying to do.
Yeah, well, the whole idea is, that's kind of the arena that I came into a real spiritual transformation, was coming through that arena. And I call it an arena just because it's that one, like you're saying, it's that one area where we're all kind of going, okay, my beliefs have not helped me here. You know what I mean? And the entire idea of spiritual transformation, the goal isn't, when we talk about walking into brokenness, and then what I try to write about is doing that for the sake of resurrection, but not missing the crucifixion part. Mm-hmm. I think maybe the major error that we've found in the world today, and the reason why the addictions and all this kind of stuff persists the way it does, is because we're missing the whole death thing. We'll talk about it. We'll go, yeah, I'm broken. So now we're going to, going to try to experience resurrection without ever actually really going through that death of the identity, right? Mm-hmm. And the deconstruction phase, if you will. So what I try to do is I spend quite a bit of the book, maybe the first half of it, just helping people kind of deconstruct in a way and basically step outside themselves and look at their lives and go, okay, there's brokenness here, and then teach them how to feel it. Because that's the whole idea, the reason I call it feels like redemption is because what we're talking about is walking into a felt experience of that brokenness. And then so that we can actually have a felt experience of resurrection. Right. And doing that through spiritual practice. And some of it is reviving, spiritual practice that is very ancient in the Christian tradition. It's just been somehow kind of, co-opted, this idea that things like meditation and things like this are only for people in the East, and they're not in the Christian tradition, though. Yeah. They go back thousands of years. So. Yeah,
I think oftentimes Christians can come to a place where they're like, okay, I've been working the program, and I'm not free at all.
Right.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about this idea you flesh out in the book about how sometimes what we do on our journey to freedom is we actually just trade one prison for another.
Yeah. Well, I use the term, I borrowed this from Willie Jennings, who's a theologian. He talks about an ordo salutis, the order of salvation, this idea that if we can place enough structures in our life, right, that can rid us of this thing that is, confronting us with our pain. So porn addiction being an example, if I can get enough systems, I get my accountability groups and I get my partners, and I'm not saying that these are inherently bad things, I'm just saying I get the software and I get the things, and I had a friend who has his computer in his kitchen, and we do all this kind of stuff, and we get this, and then we can go, okay, now I've somehow shielded myself from this thing because I have it under control, but I've actually placed myself in another prison. And it might be a better prison at some level, it's a social, I talk about the book as, now we got a window and you can see the sky a little bit, you know what I mean? Yeah. As opposed to this solitary confinement. But we have what we have is an experience that because we are afraid to truly walk into the internal experience of brokenness, we just replaced one prison with another. And we called it freedom. We just slap a bumper sticker on it, call it freedom, get some songs around it, get some interpret the scriptures that way. That's one thing Dan Allender and I have talked a lot about. A lot of this is based on a certain reading of scripture and kind of manipulating our interpretations in order to be a part of that order of salvation. You know what I mean? And so now we're saved. Even though what we're experiencing on an unconscious level is just a deep, deep internal just grief. You know what I mean? It's that whole kind of quiet desperation that so many of us are living, and that's the American culture all around.
Sure, repressed.
Deeply repressed, deeply repressed. Well, what we want is joy. What we want is peace. What we want is the internal experience. I mean, the Bible says, it's talking about a peace that passes understanding. We are something that you can't think. You just know. You know what I mean? I mean, that's my favorite stories in the scriptures about interactions with Jesus is when people are like the blind guy, you know, he gets healed, and he's like, they're like, well, you know, he heals by the power of Beelzebub, right? Yeah. And he's just like, all I know is one side's blind, and now I see. Yeah. That's all I know. And that's what we want, is where you walk out and go, I'm free. But your theology is wrong. No, but I feel free.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've experienced something.
I've experienced something.
I can't unexperience it anymore, right?
Right. But we're very afraid of experience. And we're afraid to allow experience to be something where we identify it as true. Right. Even though Jesus says that the faith like a child is the goal, which is anybody has kids gauge their experience is truth. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They find you scary, you are scary, they move away. You know what I mean? They feel that. It's not they're not deducing this in some sort of deductive reasoning or interpretation. They just know that what I'm feeling is what's real. Until we teach them to repress. Right? Mm-hmm. We get them to suppress their emotions, and then pretty soon they're going, what's true? And then the anxiety starts.
Right.
Well, and it's interesting when you and I were chatting about walking into brokenness, I was sitting there going, man, what does that look like? Because we talk about it and we go, yes, I'm broken, and then we kind of start this cycle of I'm broken, and that's why I need grace, and that's why I need forgiveness, and this is why I need these things. I'm going, yeah, that's not the experience of brokenness. And what I try to teach, and the way I move people into it is through silence. It is through meditation. It's mostly through the body. This idea that we actually hold our brokenness. When we talk about repressed energy, I mean, we're talking good theology is good psychology. Okay, and I've heard that said once, and I think it works. You know. When we talk about repressed energy in the body, we're talking about something you feel. Like your average person is going to feel stress somewhere in their body. And if they don't, it's because they're so numb, it's repressed so deeply that they just feel kind of an overall sense of numb. They say, I don't have any problems. And you look in their life and you go, no, you have lots of problems. You know what I mean? And they go, no, but I don't feel those problems. Well, it's because your entire life you've spent training yourself not to feel those problems. And the idea is what I teach in the book is, and I'm not trying to sell the book here. It's a lot.
I'm trying to sell the book. I think it's awesome. I don't know if I'm getting $1 for it. So
it's funny because I guess I say what I'm selling the book is like I can't talk for 4 hours right now and explain it, but there is what we talk about is a body experience where we actually begin to feel, and the body, the spirit is actually designed. Our spirits are designed to heal that, and we are talking about all the mystics were always talking about subtraction, not addition. This is what Meister Eckhart said, right? That the kingdom of God is a process of subtraction, not addition, meaning we're not trying to find the thing that's going to make it work. We're trying to remove the barriers internally from it already working.
Absolutely.
That it's all inside. As Jesus said, it's within you. Go after it. Go find it. And what we find is that we're I call it, we're jammed up. We're blocked. Mm-hmm. And repressed energy. And this is something that can be measured. I mean, it can be measured on a quantum level. But most of us can go, yeah, I get knots in my stomach. I get pain in my back. I get pain in my neck. Or I'm just overall numb. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine the other day was saying that. He was just like, yeah, I'm just numb. I go, maybe I'm just repressed so deeply. He goes, I don't feel like I have problems. Even though there's divorce, even though there's addiction, even though there's just strife in different areas, there's all this kind of stuff, and you're just going, well, I don't feel like I have problems.
Yeah, I think the reason so many of us say, well, I'm not connected to my calling or my purpose, but we don't know where to go yet, is that right there is a feeling. And you talk about this feeling of numbness. I don't feel connected. I don't know what. And the reason is, this is my guess, is we're already so repressed because we don't want to deal with the brokenness, right? We want to skip Saturday and go to Sunday. We want to skip burial and go to resurrection because we don't want to deal with that pain. So we have a hard time entering into the transformation that actually ultimately ends up revealing our calling. Right. And even for you, as I know your story, you go back and, you didn't want to deal with stuff you discover. Yeah. And it's actually stepping into that ends up opening you up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't you share a little bit about how that whole transformation happened?
That's a really large because you and I have talked for hours
I know.
About this stuff. So the idea, the way I was raised with calling was it's kind of this code you got to figure out, right? God's got this thing for you to do, and for us it was always somehow you're a pastor or a missionary, but in the way I was raised, but it was still one of those things where as the mystics were saying, it's a process of subtraction. There's this idea that it can actually is something just to be revealed to us. Mm-hmm. So the brokenness is the thing hiding the calling, if you will.
Yeah.
Calling is more. I had a really good friend of mine. He's a great public speaker, and he was speaking about purpose. And I was watching it one time, and they had a Q&A at the end, and everybody's saying, this lady raised her hand and says, how do you find your purpose?
Yeah.
And he goes, what would you be, if money was no object, what would you be doing right now with your life? And she goes, yeah, that's your purpose. And she goes, but I don't know what I'd be doing.
Yeah.
And then the next person asked the same question, but just kind of phrased it differently.
Yeah.
And the next person asked the same question, and he didn't know how to go, here's the problem. Because the problem is that we're so repressed, and we're so disconnected from our true self, that we can't even begin to go, yeah, this is what I want to do. You know, we're going, well, God, what do you want me to do? That's why we want God to bail us out in a way.
Right.
It's always been this, tell me what to do, God.
Yeah.
And God's going, what do you want to do?
Exactly, which is what, I mean, in the first week, like we were talking about, that's exactly what I'm trying to get people to do and get us to do, even me. But then too, it's actually can be really depressing to sit there and go, I don't know.
Yeah.
And invest the time there.
Yeah, and then so you go, okay, well, then the process of transformation for a lot of people is to back way up.
Okay.
To hit reverse, get the beep, back as far up as you can to the space where you're going, I don't know, and you stay there. And if we actually learn to stay there, in the I don't know, and then we learn spiritual practices, okay, and this is where the classic meditations and even fasting and things like that can come in as a really helpful thing, where we sit in the I don't know. That's where the brokenness is. The problem is that, and really, this whole calling question, the problem is you're talking about going into the heart, and that can be somewhat, cliche, or what does that actually mean? Because people it means stop thinking, right? We're in the head going, what do we want to do? They're trying to decode the whole thing in their brains, trying to figure it out. A friend of mine said, it's in between the thoughts you have to go. It's in between the thoughts. So the idea of meditation and allowing your spirit to rise and not allowing the ego to go silent for a while and allowing the spirit to speak. Be still and know that I am God. That's where we actually start to find that.
Right. It's not just sitting there going, I know you're God, I know you're God, I know you're God, I know you're God.
Right, exactly.
You're still talking.
And people still want to even control that process. Well, I'll go for a walk in the woods. I go, great. What do you do when you're in the woods?
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the woods.
Yeah.
Are you silencing the mind? Because you can be in the woods and be missing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because of course there's brokenness. Of course there's decay. Of course there's. I am a believer that the demonic world does exist at some level. I believe that there's entities. I believe that there's this kind of thing that moves around us, and it's something that we have to actually kind of work into in silence. But the thing is, your spirit. I mean, and it's all over the scriptures. We have the ability to heal, to be transformed. And the thing about calling is that we don't even need to pay attention to that. We heal ourselves. We go into our spirit. We allow God to just completely penetrate that part of us. Calling just emerges.
There it is.
It's
and
just
all of a
like,
sudden we come alive.
Yeah, I've heard it said, like, grass doesn't try to grow, it just grows.
Yeah.
Unless you stand on top of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the idea is you move out of the way and it just comes out. And when we talk about, though, the blockage, I think it's important that people understand that you are not one person. You are two people. You are your unconscious and your conscious. You are your ego and your spirit. There is a part of you, and my teachers have made me speak in this language. They say there's a part of me that wants this, and there's a part of me that wants that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And instead of I want to repress myself. No, I don't. A part of me does. And a part of me doesn't. A part of me wants to heal and be transformed, and that's why I've walked this path.
Absolutely, and it's important, even as we were on that journey, to point that out and remind people that you're not just broken. Yeah. You're an image bearer of the divine. It's like what Rob talks about. You're dust, of the earth, but you're also crowned in glory.
Right.
And it's different traditions want to focus on one to the expense of the other, but that holding that tension, your dust and your glory, your ego and your spirit. You want to repress, but you also don't. Right. And I was hoping you could flesh out just an easy way to understand briefly this idea of triggers and what they offer us.
Okay, I'll use porn addiction as an example. Like the porn addiction world, we always talked about triggers as being that thing that triggers your addiction. So you see some Victoria's Secret ad, or you're in the mall and you're like, you're trying not to watch. And we were always classically taught that you have to avoid the triggers.
Yeah.
Move your eyes away as fast as you can, avoid that kind of thing. I remember in the book, I actually talked about it in a 7-Eleven one time. I was reading Every Man's Battle, and so I'm trying to do these disciplines, and I'm just, and the guy behind the counter, he goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I go, "Yeah, no, I'm good. And I'm trying to, and I remember just that's when I started to recognize, like, I don't think I have a chance of doing this. I look at the world I live in. How can I move away? And then I started to recognize, when I started doing some deeper internal work, I started to recognize that triggers wasn't, whatever triggered an addiction. The addiction was just this kind of thing that was just covering up what was really going on. It was medication, right? So triggers became this thing, and this is something I was taught The triggers is the thing that triggers the actual repressed emotion. So for me at the time when I was working, it was definitely my marriage. I mean, my wife, we would just, and we lived like so many couples do, where we had the same fight over and over, and it took slightly different forms, but the rage that would come up inside of me. I mean, the extreme rage, and I started immediately going. I remember it was finally when I got that mad at my dog.
At your dog?
I body slammed my dog because he bit me one time. I was trying to get something out of his mouth. Yeah, and I think I wrote about this. I body slammed him, and I'm like, don't you ever die. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's a dog. Like, it's in me. I started to go, it's in me. That anger is in me. It's not me, it's in me. And there was this thing where I'm going, okay, so certain things trigger it. And I would go, okay, I had butterflies on my stomach for years, and I was going, what? I started just going, what is that? What is that? Like, if you were to open my stomach up and look inside, would you like see things there? Yeah. No, you wouldn't. You would see there, but that's what energy is, right? When we talk about repressed energy and emotional energy, it can only be measured on a quantum level. You can't see it with your eyes, but you can certainly feel it. Mm-hmm. People get tight in their chest, they get these kind of things. So triggers are whatever triggers those things. And those are actually a gift, and that's what I was taught. That's a gift. That is showing you something that you wouldn't otherwise know because you've got it pushed down and bedded down.
Right.
So most people spend their entire lives trying to find a life situation that keeps them from triggering that stuff. That's the ego functioning. Get enough money, get the house, get the 2 cars in the garage, get the wife, get the kids, get all that stuff. This is why a midlife crisis is such a classic cliche, is because we get to be 35 and we've got all those things and we go, oh crap, it's still there. Okay, now get a mistress, get some porn, get some alcohol, get the Seahawks, Seahawks win, please.
In a sense, would it be fair to say a trigger is this light that's saying, look, there's more going on here.
Absolutely.
There's more. And if we can get to the truth of that,
right,
by first observing that with compassion, golly, why did I get so mad when we threw instead of ran Marchand, right? I know. Why? What is that's in there? And that's the process of letting these triggers be our, as you said, teachers. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good way to put it. But it must be understood, and this is something that has to be emphasized, is that when we start thinking this way and observing this way, it can get a little messy. Yeah. And that has to be understood. Yeah. Okay, anybody that's going to go, okay, I actually want to be changed. It's all sounds great when we go, yeah, let's be changed. Yeah. But when you actually turn your attention to it, it's almost like times can feel like your guts are kind of all of a sudden hanging out. Right. And now we're going, okay, now how do I heal? And that's what we talk about brokenness. Yeah. That's actual brokenness. But we have to understand the calling, who we are, the true self, the beauty, all that. It's on the other side of that. Yeah. But we have to move through that part. But we shift our attention like that, and then we will discover what it is to be in brokenness, actually live in it.
That's good. Yeah. Well, dude, thanks so much for sharing a little bit. I'm excited about your book, and like I said earlier, I'm not getting $1 for it, so I will sell it. You can get Seth's book on Amazon now.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Yeah.
It's it's called Feels Like Redemption, and I would really encourage you, those of you who are in a home church, or maybe you and a bunch of buddies like to have breakfast once a month or something like this. There's a workbook that goes with it, and I know everyone jokes around that I'm the librarian and I'm always suggesting books, but I actually think if you do one book next year, I dare you to try it and see if this doesn't actually provoke some transformation in your life. And as we talk about calling, if we can't deal with the repressed energies and the traumas of our lives and actually transform those things, I think we miss out on some of the biggest gifts we have to offer the world. So thanks again to Seth.
Yeah, man. And, thank you.
Let's
that's a real compliment for somebody as well read as you are. That's huge. Thank you.
Yeah.